Hello, I think it's just a couple seconds before 10 o'clock. I'm going to hold that up so everybody can see the first few frames of this if you're keeping track. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And we are on chapter 14 of My Life with the Spirits. This chapter is called My Magic Wand. It may be a little longer than, say, yesterday's, but I don't want to cut it up into two things. It has a few illustrations in it, so I don't know quite how to handle that except just to show you the illustrations right now, and that way I can just completely just read through. But anyway, I have 2 pages of illustrations. They're not very good because they're actually sort of like photocopies of my diaries during that period. This is April 5th. I'm not sure what year it was, but it was during the period of time that we're going to discuss in this chapter. I was performing a 50-day intensive ritual. I called it Pentecost for a specific reason. So I was doing a great deal of yoga and exercising and meditation and walking and such. So I'm going to show it to you first. That's the first page. Let's see. There we go. And you'll see it says like April 5th. I was up at 5:45 a.m. I was 207 pounds. I was trying to lose some weight there. I had fasted for 12 days at that time. My yoga was 4 cycles. I'm not sure what that says there. I was doing a good plow. There was high clouds out on the patio that day. I did an hour and 16 minutes of pranayama. Even I was impressed. I said, wow. I'll change my pranayama cycle. At 4 p.m., I'd been fasting 24 hours continually. And I just came back from a 6-mile walk, and there's my goofy cartoon of me doing pranayama. Then down there it says 11:30 p.m. Opus Neuf. I did a lot of my notes in French. See, I said douze on April 5th there, so it was the 12th day of my 50-day thing. And then that next one is just a drawing that I put in my diary. And it says in the book there, you can't read it, but it says, I think I've mastered the art of drawing hands. And look at those horrible hands on that. So that's that. Sorry to take you on that little excursion, but I think it was necessary. So now we're going to do chapter 14, My Magic Wand. My Minerval initiation into the OTO marked the beginning of my formal magic life. Even though the order is not obliged to function as a teaching vehicle, my initiators suggested I begin the programs of study and practice that Crowley outlined in One Star in Sight, and various other texts. This work included preliminary yogic exercises, both physical and meditative, and the beginning rituals of ceremonial magic. I embraced the work with great energy and passion. Today, 23 years later, well, now it's much more than that. When I look at my magical journals of that period, I'm exhausted just reading about my routine. I rose before dawn, performing the banishing rituals of the pentagram and the hexagram. Then I limbered up with yoga, 11 rounds of 11-fold solar adoration, after which I settled, and then I'll slip past those. I settled into my asana, and my asana at that time was the dragon pose, a classic Japanese posture, kneeling with the knees and legs together, the buttocks resting on the heels of the feet. And I did pranayama. I think we talked about that in an earlier chat. I concluded the meditation period with exercises designed to increase my concentration skills, then closed with a repeat of the banishing rituals of the pentagram and hexagram. I was faithful to my regimen. As the months progressed, I increased the times and levels of difficulty of my pranayama and meditative exercises. And the foot says, yes, I could sit for an ungodly length of time with a teacup filled to the brim, balanced on my head without spilling a drop. It's an ability for which I have yet to find a need. Then I started to replace the banishing rituals with Crowley's more advanced thelemic rituals. Now, I should point out that my notes from this period indicate that I did not have a clue why I was doing all these things. Still, I plowed on and looked anxiously forward to my next OTO initiation. When it came, I felt that I was ready to cut my magic wand. The magician is armed with 4 fundamental weapons: the wand, the cup, the sword, and the disc. These 4 weapons are symbolic of the powers of the great Kabbalistic 4-letter deity Yod-He Vav He. The 4 letters in the name are in turn symbolic of 4 Kabbalistic worlds: Atzilith, the archetypal world; Bria, or Braya, Bria, the world of soft cheeses; Braya, the creative world. I had to do it. You know I had to say that. The creative world; Yetzirah, the formative world; and Asaya, the material world. These 4 worlds have their counterparts in the human soul: the Chai, or the life force; Neshama, the divine soul intuition; Ruach, the intellect; and Nepish, the animal soul. And I actually presume to put a chart of those things there. How do I do that? Finally, all these 4-part concepts can be expressed metaphorically as the 4 fundamental elements: fire, water, air, and earth. The disc is the first weapon to be constructed, for it's the foundation of the magician's career. The disc is also called the Pentacle because it should display in symbolic language the totality of the magician's magical worldview, the magician's universe. Upon this universe, the magician applies the discriminating power of the intellect, sword, in order to learn the mysteries of God and self. Knowledge is power. To truly understand this power and wield it wisely, the magician must learn to listen to the counsel of his heart, the cup. Finally, the magician earns the wand by realization of his or her true purpose. The wand is the will, and the will is the supreme weapon of the magician. Now, even though the wand is the last weapon a magician should make, it was the first one that I wanted. The thought of tracing my pentagrams and hexagrams with a real wand and brandishing it against pesky spirits and demons was just too powerful an image for my poor ego to resist. I had to have that wand. Magical literature abounds with traditions concerning how the magician goes about creating magical weapons. The wand should be of almond wood, cut from a flowering tree on the day of Corpus Christi. Now the almond, I've got a footnote about the almond wand, which is pretty lengthy and has something to do with the traditional wand that Moses used. It's his brother Aaron's staff, and it was made of almond wood. But the Hebrew letters that spell the word rod of almond is the same number as the paths of the middle pillar paths on the tree of life. It's very Kabbalistic. It should be cut with one blow from a magic knife, which the magician must also make. Yeah, right. And it should be the length of the space between the tip of the finger and the should be identified somehow with the male principal and one with the female. Once it's straightened and dried, it must be peeled and smoothed and wrapped in a black cloth until it's consecrated with an elaborate ceremony. Now, the footnote says, an unconsecrated magical weapon is like an uninitiated candidate for initiation. At the beginning of the ceremony, the candidate is hoodwinked. So too, before the consecration of the weapon, it's kept in darkness until the magician brings it to light. After that, it's to be kept in the altar wrapped in a scarlet bag. That used to be scarlet. That's what I wanted. The only thing standing between me and magical adeptship was not having that wand. My first degree initiation had been scheduled. I knew there were 2 lovely almond trees in the backyard of my initiator's home. And I'll just tell you, my initiator's home was Phyllis Seckler. She and Grady McMurtry at the time were living together. I was sure that if I asked nicely, I could cut my wand there. In the meantime, I wanted to have a practice wand. So I joined a few crazy friends on a midnight raid on a backyard in Huntington Beach known to have an almond tree. It was great fun and we felt so evil. My naughty, stolen practice wand looked pretty good. Finally, on the day of my first degree initiation, I traveled again to Dublin to be initiated. First degree in the OTO is symbolic of birth. And I could not think of a more auspicious day to cut my magic wand. And if you're confused, actually the first degree initiation in the OTO is called the 0 degree, which took place about 9 months earlier than this. The first degree is actually the second initiation performed, but it's called the first degree. I hope you're following this. First degree is symbolic of birth. And I could not think of a more auspicious day to cut my magic wand. I was granted permission to take it from one of the trees in the garden. I took my time and carefully scanned the trees from top to bottom. I spotted the perfect candidate, a very straight section about 20 inches in length. It was budding and ready to flower. About 10 inches of it were very dark, as if the branch grew during cold or a difficult season. Then the wood turned very light in color all the way to the end. This light, dark feature was the most attractive because it fulfilled the traditional male-female requirements. The branch was very high in the tree, and to my frustration, there was no ladder at hand tall enough to reach it. Grady, that's Grady McMurtry, suggested that if I stood on the very top of the ladder and used long pruning shears, I could do it. He offered to stand on the ladder below me and support me by holding on to my belt buckle. I was scared to death, but I gave it a try. I can still remember looking down at Grady, his hand clutching the waistband of my pants, Crowley's golden seal ring flashing from his finger in the sunlight. I severed the branch with one blow, and my prize tumbled to the garden floor. Grady helped me down, and we laughed like schoolboys. This was going to be the best magical wand ever. Once back home, I constructed a fixture out of a board and a few nails and put my precious wand in the straightening device. It took nearly 3 months to dry and straighten to my liking. In the meantime, I used my stolen substitute wand in all my daily rituals. Finally, the wand was ready to remove from the fixture. I trimmed it and sanded it to a sensuous smoothness. I oiled it with olive oil and rubbed it to a perfect polish. I can't tell you how beautiful it was. It was dark brown to the middle, then turned a brilliant, creamy, light green. I sewed a red satin bag where it would live after its consecration. Until then, I stored it wrapped in a black cloth. Nothing would be too good for my wand. I composed a 14-day ceremony of consecration that would begin on the evening of the new moon and climax on the full moon in Aries, cardinal fire. I constructed a ceremony around the preliminary invocation of the Goetia and its barbarous words of evocation. Each night after banishing and opening my living room temple, I removed the wand from its black wrapping and set it before a bowl of flaming alcohol in the east. I then recited the preliminary invocation and performed the greater invoking ritual of the pentagram fire, after which I passed the wand through the flames, reciting the barbarous words of evocation to call forth the spirits of fire. Then I returned the wand to its black wrapping and banished and closed the temple. On the second night, I repeated the ceremony as before, but I recited 2 rounds of the barbarous words. The third night, 3 rounds, until by the last night I found myself whipped up into quite a frenzy by 14 rounds of the barbarous words of evocation. Admittedly, this is a crude and unimaginative ritual, but at the time I thought it was pretty good. Now, here I must pause and point out a curious side effect that this ritual seemed to produce. On the first night of the ceremony, an irritating drip developed in our bathtub, which because of our unresponsive landlord, developed within 3 days to a torrent. The irritation was compounded by the ear-splitting high-frequency hiss the bathroom pipes emitted as all this water poured out of the faucet. Now, while plumbing problems are hardly indicative of magical phenomena, the timing of the event caused me to joke with Constance that in reaction to all my fire invocations, the spirits of water seemed to be attacking the house. The waterfall in the bathroom grew louder and louder and more maddening throughout the entire 2-week operation. On the 7th night, a thick marine fog rolled into the neighborhood and repeated its nightly visits for 3 straight evenings. Finally, the night of the final grand climactic consecration ceremony arrived. Each preceding night I worked myself up a little more, increasingly losing myself in ever wilder barbarous babbling. I was really getting behind this kind of magic. On the final night, with 14 rounds of barbarous words, I was prepared to go all out. As usual, Constance and Jean-Paul retired to the bedroom. I set up the living room temple as I had done for 13 evenings. I got out the red bag that would be my wand's new home from that night forward. I put on my black robe. I lit the bowl of alcohol and set to work. Things were cooking. After all these nights, I had everything memorized and flowing out of my mouth like Shakespeare. I could see the angelic guardians in the quarters. I could actually feel the fire as I ripped open the veils of spirit active and slashed the flaming pentagrams into place in the greater invoking ritual. By the time I began the barbarous words, Aro go go ru abreo sotu mudario, I was a fire-spitting wizard with one thing on my mind, evoking the spirits of fire into my new wand. I was having the time of my life. I repeated the words again and again. It kept getting better. For Larthreo, Suddenly, I heard what sounded like rain on the roof, falling in loud, heavy drops, then splattering in the driveway. Then the front of our apartment shook as a great rushing hiss blasted against the front door. I stopped the ritual and looked out the window to see a thick geyser of water ejaculating 5 feet in the air in the middle of the driveway that separated the 2 rows of apartments. The main water line to the complex, a huge and ancient pipe, had burst underground right in front of our apartment and was washing chunks of asphalt into the street. All the neighbors were yelling and running out to see what was happening. Some had to quickly move their cars before they were swallowed by the rapidly forming sinkhole. I stood there in my black robe, my black hooded robe, clutching my magic wand, the living room illuminated wildly by the flickering light of a large flaming bowl of alcohol. My God, I can't let the neighbors see me like this. I quickly put out the flame and got out my robe and joined the others outside as we waited for the fire department to arrive. It was nearly 1 a.m. by the time things quieted down. I figured my wand had been consecrated enough. I performed a banishing ritual, closed the temple, and put my newly consecrated wand in its new red bag. Already it had quite a career. In the morning, I would use it for the first time in my daily rituals. 3 hours later, my alarm went off. It was still dark. I got up, washed my face, and put on my black robe. I grabbed my new wand and put it on the living room chair. As I did every morning, I shuffled half asleep into the kitchen and fixed myself a short cup of coffee. A few minutes later, I returned to the living room with my coffee and thoughtlessly sat down full force on my new wand, snapping it neatly in two. Now, that's the end of chapter 14. I think I've got a 3-paragraph chapter 15 postscript to that. And if I may, I'm going to read that because I can't leave us there. Chapter 15, My Magic Wand, a Postscript. I debated for just an instant how I was going to react. I came to the conclusion that if I didn't think this was funny, I was unworthy to call myself a magician. I started to laugh. It was funny beyond funny. My laughter woke up Constance. It woke up Jean-Paul. I woke up the neighbors with my howls. I didn't even consider gluing it back together. A weapon of will that needs to be glued together is pretty damn pathetic. I asked my little family if they would let me have one more night alone in the temple. That night's ritual was very simple. I banished and opened as usual. I lit the bowl of alcohol and placed the 2 broken pieces of a beautiful broken wand in the flames. Once they were burning, I got out my naughty stolen surrogate wand that had served me so well in the last few months. I passed it through the flames until the pieces of the broken wand were completely consumed. Just before the flame flickered out, I stuck the tip of my new old wand directly on the dying ember and uttered my only words of invocation. Jump in there, goddammit. Thank you for sitting through this more lengthy little session. I'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully, be good to yourselves, be good to others. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law.